The Law Report with Karen Key.
The recent increase in cases made against retailers regarding faulty merchandise brings to the fore the need for retail outlets to implement adequate liability cover, as the Consumer Protection Act may prohibit these stores from simply passing the buck, which they often do, to manufacturers. And this is according to Simon Colman. He's an underwriting executive at SHA Specialist Underwriters. Now, as you know, if you're a regular listener to the show, we usually deal with issues relating to the consumer. But tonight we're taking a look at how these new regulations affect the businesses. Simon, welcome back to the show. You were on with us a little earlier. Nice to have you back on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Right, so we spoke earlier about insurance for business owners against labour disputes. Now we're taking a look at the retail outlets and adequate liability cover. And the Consumer Protection Act has now stopped them from saying, well, it's not my fault, the manufacturers can deal with this. What is actually going on now?
Well, I suppose, before the Consumer Protection Act came out, what we're going on 4 years ago now, retailers were in the habit of just passing the liability down the chain to the supplier or the manufacturer. So what we found was, your shop on the corner wouldn't have product liability insurance even. They would just, if a customer came in and said, look, I've injured myself using this product, they would say, well, we didn't make it. You need to chat to the manufacturer. And of course, that road generally led nowhere because, as you know, we import a lot of products into South Africa, which left the consumer high and dry. They really didn't have the resources, or being that a lot of our products also come from Asia, litigating in those territories is challenging even for a corporate, let alone for a private individual. So I think that the Departments of Trade and Industry decided that through the CPA, they were going to make it easier for consumers to hold somebody responsible when they were injured. And of course, the retailers are the face of that. They're the ones who sold you the product, and they're probably the ones that you as the injured consumer are going to go and chat to first. So what we're seeing is a lot more focus being put on the retailers. The law's being structured in a way that says joint and several liability for everyone in the supply chain. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the manufacturers are out of the loop now. All I'm saying is that the consumer has the ability to choose who they're going to pull into this, and the most likely target is actually going to be the retailer.
Now, this is just injury. This isn't faulty.
Well, look, the injuries and damage caused by the product, you're talking about a section of the Act that actually deals with strict liability. When it comes to refunds and replacements, that's squarely sitting with the retailer anyway. So, if you bought a product and it was defective and you wanted to return it, you've got 6 months under the CPA to do that. And the retailer is obliged to give you a refund or a replacement, which you as the consumer can choose which of those. When it comes to the injury and damage side caused by products, that's strict liability, and that's dealt with in a separate section of the CPA. But certainly refunds and replacements also dealt with, although not in the same section.
Now, the problem with South Africans now, before we used to smile, I know I used to smile at Americans who were very litigious as a society. You were terrified they would come to your home and slip on the front step on the ice or something because they'd sue you. And we used to say, oh gosh, thank goodness we're not like that. But we are becoming like that now.
Well, I think, one doesn't want to say we're going to get to that level of litigiousness, if that's a word. But I think we need to acknowledge that we've fashioned a lot of our legislation on foreign legislation. And we seem to have taken quite a bit of that from the U.S., particularly in the consumer protection environment. What we don't have here, obviously, is a jury system, and we don't have punitive damages either, which are fairly unique to the U.S. environment. And I would imagine that if we didn't have our judges sitting and making the decisions, and we had 12 of our peers making those decisions, we might also see some dramatic changes. But for now, all we really need to worry about, certainly from a business point of view, is complying with this law that makes it easier for consumers to take action against us.
And that puts the retailers at quite a lot more risk than they've ever had before.
It does, and it's in an environment now where margins are very thin. You'll know that cheaper products are being imported all the time. So, does that mean that quality is going to be different? I'm not sure, but it's created a very challenging environment for the retailers to operate in.
I think most retailers, you would imagine, up to now have had some form of insurance, but have they got the right insurance is what I'm trying to find out now.
Well, look, in our business, we convert a lot of insurance policies from what we would call their old policy forms that they were on. We used to call it multi-mark liability in South Africa, onto something which we call broad form. So there are a lot of businesses out there that have got liability insurance that was almost thrown in with their assets insurance. If you were insuring the buildings and the contents, you almost got this free liability insurance with it. And generally that cover is not adequate for the new environment. So every retailer, particularly the smaller ones, the independently owned ones, should be chatting to their insurance brokers, and liability should be at the top of the list of risks to look at. The other thing I should add is they don't buy enough of the cover, and I'm not saying this because I'm in the business. I'm saying this because, R1 million worth of liability insurance isn't going to get you very far if you add in your legal costs. And if you look at these two recent cases against Massmart, the damages that are being asked for are collectively, I think, about 30-odd million.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So, and you may be selling something fairly innocuous, like in those two cases there were ladders. It's really not enough. If you think about the cost of medical care, what people are earning, you need to look at who your consumers are, but to have R1 million worth of liability insurance just doesn't make any sense, especially seeing as it's probably the cheapest part of your insurance program. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because basically, you've got to, as you say, cover your legal costs, which are not going to be cheap either. And these sort of cases do tend to drag on. And then you've still got to think of the awards made if they win, if the person taking you to court wins and they win an award for personal injury. That could be millions.
Absolutely, and you could also factor in class action.
Oh my God! Yeah, well, that's even worse.
Because the CPA allows for that now. So if you happen to sell a product and 50 people got injured, you got a serious problem then, and you're probably going to be uninsured for the larger portion of that type of claim.
And I was looking as well at some information that came through about the Consumer Protection Act also empowers the National Consumer Commission to initiate a product recall if they feel a dangerous product is on the shelf, and that can also cost you a lot of money.
That can cost a lot of money, and very few companies in South Africa have that type of insurance. Barring your big retailers and as you would have seen often, motor manufacturers often have to initiate recalls. But we're seeing these recalls being initiated now in smaller businesses. I forget the name of the company, but very recently here in South Africa, a company that was manufacturing safes, to keep your valuables in, they had to initiate a massive recall because someone somewhere in the world had figured out that if you punched in a certain kind of code in a certain sequence, you could unlock any of these safes. So they had to initiate a recall, and there you're talking about something that's actually installed into a wall or something, so the costs of recovering those, that can be hugely expensive.
So I'm sort of wondering how much insurance is enough here? It's starting to think we live on bread and water and just pay insurance.
Yeah. As the insurance practitioner, I'd say you never have enough.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
But no, the reality is, your broker can help you to choose how much you should have. And really, they should be looking at things like, if you're talking about product recall, for instance, you can sit down and you can go, right, am I selling this stuff outside of the country? If so, what will it cost for me to get the stuff back or to destroy it at the destination? If you're selling a certain type of product that has the potential to cause injury, then you should be looking at a higher limit than, let's say, you're selling food or something like that. So So there are things that, and that's where we guide our brokers. We say to them, look, let's look at the actual risk. What is the product? Where's it going? What's it going to cost us if we get it back again? And you, in that way, can be guided in how much one should have. But I should again underline the fact that generally your liability insurance is far cheaper than what you'd be paying on your car or your property. And that's why it really makes no sense not to have enough of it, because you could probably have 10 million rands worth of insurance for not a lot more than you were paying for the million that you've got at the moment. It's worth investigating, definitely.
And by the sounds of it, if you don't have it, you might not have the car or the property to be paying anything off of in the end anyway.
And that's really the function of a liability policy, to make sure that the business is able to continue when you have this kind of catastrophe.
Now, sometimes, I mean, not often, but you do sometimes get cases of people taking a chance. They'll say, well, this thing doesn't work, and then it turns out they stuck a screwdriver in the live socket or something and electrocuted themselves, and now they're blaming the product. And that's still going to cost you to get it to the point where they figure out the guy was just taking a chance.
Definitely, and I think my claims guys in the office are probably going to kill me for saying this, but, we find that most of our claims don't progress beyond that legal defense process, because often all it takes is a skilled liability attorney, someone who can go, hang on a second, you say that this broken glass was in this bag of flour, yet we know from the way that these things are packed that the glass wouldn't be at the bottom, it will be somewhere in the middle. Using the experience to figure out which claims are the spurious ones, or the ones that have completely no chance of success, being able to separate that. So most claims are resolved just with legal costs being covered, but then of course you do have the ones that go beyond that, and their damages involved.
So it's another case of going off to speak to a short-term insurance broker.
Yes.
And I'll give out the website and your email address again if people want to contact you or just to have a look and find out more. But your best bet, as you say, is to go via their own short-term insurance brokers.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Simon, thank you once again very much for chatting with us. And I'm sure we'll chat with you again in the future, because you've got lots to tell us about how we can insure ourselves against all sorts of rather unfortunate events, I think we can call them. But thank you so much indeed for your time this evening.
Thanks again, Simon.
Simon Colman is an underwriting executive at SHA Specialist Underwriters. For more information, you can take a look at the website, www.sha.co.za, or you can email simon@sha.co.za. But as he says, maybe it's the best idea for you is to go and speak to your own short-term insurance broker and just try and find out about all these things that can cover you and your business so you don't end up in a really nasty situation.